Hello and welcome to the introduction to facial structure. Facial structure is what makes the difference between this example on the left and this example on the right. You can see that both examples show an artist that knows all the facial features and roughly understands where to place them on a face. I think most of us, no matter what level of art, we know that we have generally two eyebrows, two eyes, a nose, and a mouth, right? And we roughly know that where they are in relation to each other. But knowing the actual structure and the making the effort to put in the extra attention to detail required to the face can make all the difference. For example, you can see that this character has two eyebrows, and they actually look roughly the same to these ones. It's just two lines. And yet, the eyebrows over here imply more of a 3D structure than the ones over here. Because faces actually, they are round. They come out. If I were to draw, so example, I have a line that goes across here from the front, then it would look something like this. In the 3/4 view. And you can see that the eyebrows here, they actually almost follow this contour around the face. But these ones, they don't. One is higher than the other, and they have different angles. So this one's very straight, and this one's slightly angled down. And where they start, their starting point, is a bit different. So this one is starting just above the inner of the eye, and this eyebrow is starting, if you think about it, it's starting right on the nose bridge. So these little things make all the difference when it comes to the face. Knowing the structure and not knowing it has a huge impact. In the bottom example, we have a face that is very symmetrical. And on this side, the artist has used lines that are not very confident, and they are quite bumpy and asymmetrical. So you can see that this part of the head is kind of almost like a triangle, whereas this one actually comes out more like a piece of a pie or a watermelon. The nose is also very close to the mouth, and the ears are not at the same level. If you just viewing this face, you'll notice all these things because we are so drawn to faces, and generally we portray them quite symmetrically, unless it's a character trait to have an asymmetrical face or a stylistic choice where everyone in the world has warped faces. Well, not warped, asymmetrical faces. But even in the case of asymmetrical faces, you would draw them with confidence. So you can see that these lines here, they're a lot more wobbly and they are more chicken scratchy than, actually, I can't really say that about this one. They are more chicken scratchy and not confident compared to this side. Confidence makes all the difference between purposeful stylization and just not knowing how something is really supposed to look, and you're just kind of putting down a line and hoping for the best. Over here, I've put 3 of my own past artworks. I'm going to try and analyze them a little bit with you, because I think at this point of my art, I knew the basics of faces. I could kind of mimic the anime faces that I saw from other artists, but I didn't actually understand how faces worked or the structure beneath them that dictated how they would appear on the outside. But first, I'm going to roughly go over some structural tips about faces. I'm going to go over some structure tips for the face. The eyes are roughly halfway down the face. And in between the eyes is the length of an eye itself. These are generalizations, so of course not every face is going to fall under these. They're just kind of like ways to help you remember certain placements of things. Something for you to refer to when you're checking if anything is off, or if your face looks off and you can't tell what the issue is. The bottom of the nose, roughly halfway from the eye to the chin. Then the mouth, the bottom of the mouth, you'll find that halfway between the bottom of the nose to the chin. The eyebrows, the beginning of the eyebrows is going to line up with the side of the nose. So if I draw in the side of the nose, that is roughly where it falls. Then the edges of the mouth actually line up with the inside edge of the pupil. The ears start from just above the eyes to the nose. Of course, this will change depending on the angle. And depending on the lens of your viewpoint, you can normally actually fit a whole eye between the side of the face and the eye itself. But girls will often try to enhance the size of the eye anyway, which makes that gap a little less noticeable with makeup. But it's important to just remember that there is a gap here. There are lots of little details that you can go into as well. For example, the eye. There's the underside of the eye of the eyelid that you can actually sometimes see. Often girls will fill it in with makeup to make it to make the eyeliner darker. And you can usually see a little bit of the under eye, the top of this bottom eyelid. You can often see it. For realistic eyes, the pupil becomes a circle. Well, not becomes, is a circle. However, when stylized, this pupil can change into a lot of different shapes. Oftentimes, for anime eyes, it can become larger and more like a oval instead. To make the eyes bigger and more expressive, they will increase this length. Having bigger pupils also creates a cute look. When drawing eyes, you want to make sure that the pupils are both looking at the same thing. So you don't want one going outwards and one going forward unless you want the eye to be looking a little in two different directions, essentially. You want to be careful to avoid that. I usually ensure this by paying attention to the eye whites. That if we're looking from a front view, the same amount of eye white should be seen. With the exception of when eyes go extremely to one side or the other. Sometimes, due to the angle and structure, the eye white won't look exactly the same. But when the eyeball is more centered, I use these lens to double check. There's also lots of different ways to draw the double eyelid, but normally for anime, a lot of people just kind of exaggerate the eyelids a bit and make them quite thick double eyelids. In reality, there are many types of eyelids. There are some that actually stop here. They kind of fade into this part of the eyelid. Or there are very thin ones that are barely noticeable. Or ones that you only really see the front part of. There are also a lot of different eye shapes that you can come up with. Some people will have droopier upper eyelids, creating a almost cat-like, no, not cat. I don't know how to describe it, but this kind of look. Maybe the current name for it is maybe siren-like eyes. Yeah, essentially my point is that although these are the structural parts of the eye, you can actually change them around a lot depending on what you want your character or what your character that you're drawing looks like. So the nose bridge is over here. Some people choose to define it even from the front. So the nose actually looks something like this, but for a lot of anime artists, we choose to simplify it so the nose often casts kind of a shadow like this, or like this, and we will just simplify all of this into either just the nostrils or just the edge of that shadow and a nostril. Or, so if I turn this down a little bit more, or you can define the nose simply by the shadow that it casts. But to be able to create the shape that is needed, you still need to understand the structure that these simplifications came from. Which is why when I started drawing, I would have made mistakes like putting the nose down here or up here, or just, oh, I can dot a nose anywhere, just somewhere in the middle of the face, right? The nose, actually, this tiny dot is actually quite important because it conveys a lot of information about where the rest of that nose is, what direction it's facing, the direction of the light, the proportions of the face. So back to the eye for a second, I realized I missed out on the inner eye. So the eyeball actually stops here and you have this thing. A lot of the time, this gets simplified out. So an example of how the eye shape can be simplified into anime style. So as you can see, the corner of the eye, it's actually still there. The top eyelid gets simplified into two parts, and I usually like to have the bottom part as well, and having the eye shape, the pupil. The pupil inform the viewers of where the bottom eyelid is, or have eyelashes help with that, depending on the level of detail I'm going for. One very popular style of makeup right now is to add some enhancement, some shadow to the under eyelid. So in the past, most people, they just did color up here for makeup, but now people are enjoying this look of the under eye, which if you put a line here, it's just going to look like an eye bag. So it's more so done with color. Let me show you what I mean. quite subtle. And also depending on the level of detail, the amount of stylization, you might not even have this showing. But it is important to know that it is there and the way that it is utilized. As for the mouth, I usually simplify it to kind of 3 parts. The middle part kind of sticks out a bit, like this, almost like a little heart shape in the middle. And then the side of the lips come under it. And then you have the very corners of the mouth. And the lips go to these corners. Or in anime, you can simplify it. Some people end up just having a line. A line, and then if it's a smiling mouth, because the middle 2 lips are pressed together, you'll have that gap. A lot of the times, chins in stylized faces will become a sharp point instead of the rounded face that we normally have. Cut this down the middle. Eyebrows are thinned out as well, becoming just a line. A lot of this is the result of simplification for the purpose of animation. So animation, you have to draw over and over the same thing. So a lot of complex shapes end up becoming simpler lines and curves that you can draw faster. Especially with 2D animation, this was very important. Look kind of creepy. Okay, hopefully that helped explain some of the face parts to you, and hopefully you're not scarred by how creepy this face is looking. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm just gonna separate this a little bit. Does that look? That looks more creepy. I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it here, like so. Okay, let's go on to analyzing some of my old work. I was thinking that hopefully maybe you can see some similar problems. I imagine that the problems that I would have dealt with before are perhaps some of the ones that you're facing now with your faces. So let's see. For this face, it doesn't have a strong face structure to begin with. The chin is kind of melding together with the jaw. This is the chin, this is the jaw, and it's together. Instead of really being treated as a separate thing, where now this is the chin, and this is the jaw, the part where it curves up towards the ear. I think I didn't really know how eyes worked at all. I didn't think about any of this structure up here. I was like, this is how anime eyes look to me. There's some big thick lines for the eyes and a big round eyeball and lots of light shining onto the eye. This is how I ended up drawing the eye. But now that I understand the structure of the face more, I can apply that, and you end up with a face that is more believable. Whoops. The eyebrows are a bit high up, and they don't really tell you the structure of the face well. So where you place the nose and the mouth gives the viewer a lot of information about where that cross-section of the face is. So you really want to make sure you put them in the intended position. I didn't really think about the structure of the head either, the shape that the head should be, nor how the neck is connected to the shoulders. These things didn't really occur to me at the time. I simply thought, oh, this is roughly how people draw an anime head. This is roughly the shape of a shoulder, except I made it so sharp it looks like a right angle. I didn't really think about all these things, but now that I do, you can see that my understanding of faces really, you can see the improvement very clearly from before. For this one, it's the same problem. I didn't think about where the skull, the hair should come from. And didn't think about the jawline or the chin or the forehead. I didn't treat these as real things. I was so focused on the stylization. The eyes, they look very flat. Even though the character is turned to the side slightly, they look as if I'm looking at the eyes front on. They don't really show any depth. And there's not enough space between them. There's no space for the nose bridge. The nose is very flat as well on the face, as opposed the nose is very flat as well on the face, as opposed to sticking out. The eyebrow should also be hinting, because the eyebrow, it's going to align with the side of the nose, right? And it leads into the nose bridge. It shouldn't be all the way here in the middle of the forehead. This looks like it makes a lot more sense than before. I think all three drawings kind of suffer from the same issues. I just didn't think about the face structure. I just imagined what a face should look like and put it down. But now that I know, yes, a person has a chin and a jaw and a cheek, and I don't know what this part is called, temple, and a forehead. I can break these down and learn what type of shape or line they should all look like, and apply them in my artwork. To be honest, I should have picked some more variety in faces because they're all kind of facing the same way. Just a kind of 3/4 view looking to the side. But I don't think I had a lot to pick from, is the issue. I must have drawn this face a lot. You can see I can add a subtle amount of depth to the face because the character is turned this way a little bit. This eye is slightly thinner than this eye because this part is turned away from us. So the last part I wanted to discuss is using 3D models to help you. If you don't understand the structure of a face, well, now instead of having to obtain a sculpture or having someone model for you, we have models for free available that you can even import into your painting software. And this allows you to look at a face at so many different angles and study how each part looks. So instead of having to find the perfect reference, you can use a 3D model instead. It is just such a helpful resource for understanding how to draw different angles of a complex structure like the face. So if you're struggling with any sort of face angle in particular, I recommend either finding a reference or just using a 3D model. Say you want to draw a character looking down from a high angle, which is kind of hard to picture. It's not a common position to view someone. Well, you can just position the 3D model and either use it as a reference or just draw over it. as long as the 3D model you're using is as long as you have the permission to be using the 3D model that you have. This one I just got for free from Clip Studio. I think it's just included with the assets that are downloaded by default. The only issue with tracing it is, of course, you are very limited to however the model has been stylized already, but you can always alter that afterwards as well. So you can turn it off and then just change whatever things you want to change. Why do things the hard way when you don't have to, right? This model in particular can't help with things such as the little details of the eyes that I went over earlier. So we know from this angle we'll likely see the bottom of the top eyelid, and you'll still need to know how to draw eyelashes in if you want the appearance of eyelashes, because this model doesn't have it. You'll need to understand how to apply the structure of a double eyelid in if the character has a different type of eyelid than the 3D model. You'll also need to learn how to apply different eye shapes if the 3D model doesn't have the eye shape of your character. Being able to move eyes lower for characters that have lower outer corners of their eye, and knowing how to draw in the pupil. These things are still pieces of knowledge that you will need to apply when using the 3D model. So just because you have the 3D model available doesn't mean you can rely on it entirely. Well, you could, but that won't necessarily, that won't necessarily bring you the best effect possible for your artwork. It is the combined strength of using the 3D model for this difficult angle and your pre-existing knowledge of face structure that will create the best effect in the end. This brings us to the exercise. So your first task is to use a 3D model and draw 9 different angles of the face. You can either reference or trace the 3D model, but what I want you to pay attention to while you're doing that is breaking up the face into each of the different parts that makes up the structure, such as the chin, the lips, the nose, eyes, the forehead, the cheek, the jaw. You want to pay attention to the shape and the type of lines that each part creates at different angles, whether you're referencing or tracing. That's what I want you to pay attention to. The second task, level 2, is applying character traits. to the 9 face angles. So for these face angles, you don't have to do it like facing forward, facing slightly to the side, facing to the side. I'm going to let you do whatever angles you want as long as they're different. But you can also do it like this if you'd like. So this is kind of the standard way to go about it, where you have 9 different angles, like so. This is really good practice, especially if you like VTubers and you ever want to rig some VTubers. Getting to know these 9 angles will be very helpful. But otherwise, you can really do any 9 angles that you want, just angles that you would like to practice, angles that you enjoy, any, really. Now I want you to apply character traits to the 9 angles. So I want you to make this face. I want you to make it recognizable to a character or a person by applying the things that distinguish that character's face onto the face that you're drawing. Whether that be adding hair or changing up the structure of the different parts of the face. I want you to practice making a face recognizable to be a character at any different angle. The last task, level 3, is to draw the 9 angles that you've chosen from memory. This is where if you picked this set of angles, probably makes it easier because you know what angles you chose. But yes, drawing from memory will allow you to really solidify everything you've learned. But you do have to really think and analyze the level 1 and level 2 tasks. While you're drawing, you really want to figure out why things look the way they do and how. So get to know, oh, the nose at this angle, it raises up and it even blocks the eye, or it can block the eye. How do the lips look different from this low angle compared to the high angle? You can see more of the upper lip, but then when it's the low angle, you see more of the lower lip. Things like that. You want to retain those and apply them when you try level 3. Okay, I hope that explanation made sense and that you enjoy the exercise. I will see you in the next lesson. Bye.